And now it's August. August 1864. After the fight at the inn, I was able to leave the compound much more often. I suppose after what I'd done, Hijikata thought I earned a little more trust. I didn't feel like I did anything extraordinary, but I wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. I was genuinely happy that the man, Hijikata, approved of me. The legendary man. On this particular day, I was out on patrol with Harada and the 10th Division. Excuse me, Harada? The Shinsengumi is out patrolling day and night, right?
Yeah, that's right. What about it?
But what exactly is it that you do? Most of the men in the Shinsengumi were intimidating, death-dealing titans, but Harada was a rare exception. Warm and friendly.
Well, I guess we do just about everything. Obviously, we arrest people who want to test out their swords or don't pay for their food.
People who don't pay for food?
And then there's those chumps who think they'll make a living leaning on the merchants.
It wasn't really the answer I'd expected. I guess the Shinsengumi's job is closer to a magistrate's than I thought. Thinking back, I remembered how excited they were during the raid. What they did at the inn was far more intense than their day-to-day work. A little further down the road, a couple of men in Shinsengumi blues were waving at us. Nagakora! I guess our separate rounds brought us to the same spot.
Hey there, Chizuru. Find out anything about your dad?
No, nothing today.
Aw, come on, cheer up. There's always tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There was something contagious about his optimism.
Well, Shinpachi, you find anything exciting? No, nothing in particular, but all of the people on the street are acting busy, you know.
I hadn't noticed it before, but he was right. They were acting strange, almost nervous. Yeah, it looks like they're getting ready to move.
You think maybe they're worried about getting caught in the middle of a war?
What? War? There wasn't a war, was there?
Oh yeah, we didn't tell you yet, huh? Well, those Choshu bastards are showing up around Kyoto again, hence our extra rounds. Well, we did give them a bloody nose at Ikeda. I can't imagine they'll just stand around with some of their guys in the ground.
Were the Choshu going to try something again?
Beats me. Kinda hard to tell at the moment. It doesn't matter anyway. We just do our job. The Choshu attack Kyoto, we drive them back. Simple.
They accepted their situation and never complained. I had a good deal of respect for Harada and Nagakora.
If they don't back off soon, we're probably going to be getting new orders all the way from the top.
So, you think the Aizu will give you all orders?
Yeah, they might ask us to join as part of the official shogunate troops. Well, chances like this only come every so often. Who knows when the next one will be? Wanna join us?
What? I was perplexed by his sudden invitation. Does this mean I could march as a member of the Shinsengumi? It seemed rather inappropriate for me to ask to participate just for curiosity's sake. Still, I very much hope to be helpful in some way. Could I perhaps do something like what I'd done at the Ikeda Inn? However, there's also the chance that I become a hindrance as opposed to helping them out. I want to come, because my boo will be there. My mind was made up. I nodded to Harada. I want to help. I would like to participate and help in some way.
Alright, thanks for letting me know. When the time comes, I'll be sure to back you up so you could join us.
Thank you, Sanosuke. Several days later, this music was playing. Excuse me. I carefully lifted the serving platter with tea for the captains and made my way to the common room.
Aw, thanks. Thanks, Chizuru. Man, it's like you're our servant or something.
I mean, well, I was a page as far as everyone knew. The thought to correct him crossed my mind, but instead I stayed silent as I passed the tea out.
Thank you, Yukimura. I feel bad asking you to do this.
Oh, it's nothing. After all, I am Hijikata's page. I spoke barely above a whisper, but Inoue smiled and nodded at me. Okita took a sip of his tea, and a mild grimace flickered across his face. Is something wrong with the tea? The taste is fine, but it could be a little hotter. Maybe you're taking too long to pour it. But I guess I can expect this from you. I'm sorry, I'll make a new batch right now. Don't worry about it. I like it lukewarm. I can drink it immediately, right, Hajime?
Sure. Right. I guess lukewarm tea isn't bad on a hot day like today.
Hajime put on the spot. It was silent for a second before the door slid open and Kondo arrived with a stern look upon his face.
The Shinsengumi has received an official request from the Aizu domain. All available soldiers must begin preparations to move out immediately. Yeah! It seems the Aizu have finally noticed all the hard work we've been doing, men.
He looked just as happy with the news as the rest of them. Apparently, getting orders directly from the Aizu domain was an occasion for some excitement. Hijikata, however, was the lone exception.
We don't have time for this shit. Stop patting each other on the back and get moving. We need to go now! The Choshu are already in Kyoto. We can't let them gain the upper hand on us.
As Hijikata rebuked the men, the warriors all scattered sequentially to their stations. When it was only the captains and myself remaining in the room, Hijikata vented.
What? So only when the Choshu attack Kyoto is everyone ready to go? This is bullshit.
Thinking back at what happened at Ikeda Inn, while the Shinsengumi were fighting hard, the Aizu domain was elsewhere and came strolling in way later at the scene. Remembering that incident, I feel like I can understand Hijikata, at least to some extent.
Okita and Todo, you will remain at headquarters. I doubt you'll like it, but well, neither do I. Your injuries keep you from active duty, as do mine.
He rubbed his left arm absently and looked away. Hey, speak for yourself. It's not like my injuries didn't recover or something. But I guess I'm not at 100% either. So, if you're telling me to sit this one out, I will. You're making a big deal out of nothing. This is just a scratch. Kondo's being a wuss. Okita acted as if he didn't hear Sanan at all while Heisuke pouted.
You sure about that? All last night you were crying like a baby.
You son of a bitch! Why you gotta rat me out? Is there even a heart in there, you old bastard?
But you did scream like a baby though, right? Right, Chizuru?
Hey! Don't ask her! It'd be nice if you could keep your mouth shut for once, you know.
He glanced sideways at me. But Heisuke, it's true that your injury hasn't recovered. His bangs hit the scar rather well, but it still looked painful. Nagakura broke the awkward silence.
Oh yeah. Chizuru, you said you wanted to go with us if we got called in, right? You still up for that?
Even though I told Harada that I was into the idea of joining them, it still seemed a little risky.
Ah, yes. Well, I see no reason why not. After all, opportunities like this are seldom seen.
For some reason, Kondo was easy to convince. I wasn't expecting him to be so easily swayed.
What the hell? If she's tagging along, maybe it'd be a good idea for me to come too, right?
You're still all out of shape though, right? You stay behind at the compound. Aw, that's awesome, Chizuru.
Are you sure it'll be alright? Hijikata and Sanan sighed at the sight of my reservations, which was understandable.
We can't promise you won't get hurt, or worse. You should stay here.
Do you wish to place undue burden on the Shinsengumi? We are not here to entertain you.
Colonel Sanan, can I take that to mean, so long as she is not a burden, she is free to accompany us?
I blinked. Saito standing up for me? Ah! Sanan seemed nearly as surprised as I was.
You can't be saying you're actually in favor of bringing her along.
Saito simply shrugged.
She was an asset, Etiketta. I only intended to point out that, judged by her actions, she has hardly proved to be a burden.
Never in a million years would I have imagined that Saito might have a word of praise for me. My eyes grew wide with elation, and Kondo nodded in agreement.
Excellent! I will take full responsibility for your inclusion. That is, of course, if you still wish to participate.
Sanan still didn't seem convinced. I looked around the room until my eyes met Okita's. Do whatever you want to do, so long as you get that we're going to a battle, not a party. It looked like I wasn't about to get any help from Okita, who looked nonplussed either way. Perhaps I'd be able to help them out, like I had during the Battle of Ikeda Inn. I nodded. Yes, I would like to participate. Let's do it. After that, everything was a blur. As quickly as we could, we prepared for battle and marched to the Fushimi Magistrate's office. There were a number of the Kyoto Judiciary Commissioner's men gathered there as well, in preparation for battle with the Choshu. Walking proudly in front of the men, Kondo approached the government official near the gate.
We, the Shinsengumi, are reporting as requested by Lord Katamori Matsudaira, the Lieutenant General of the Aizu.
Katamori Matsudaira was the lord of the Aizu domain, and also the Kyoto Military Commissioner, which made him a very important person. His name would have been immediately recognized. The man standing near the gate looked slightly taken aback by the mention of the Shinsengumi.
You were told to report here, but we received no such orders.
No, that didn't make any sense. What? Perhaps sensing my confusion, Saito leaned over and whispered under his breath.
If they haven't received notice of our orders, lines of communication are likely in disarray.
Do you mean the Choshu is overpowering the shogunate's forces?
Not necessarily. However, I do suspect the enemy to be doing well.
This could be tricky. The Judiciary Commissioner and the Military Commissioner had similar organizations, but they operate very differently. The Military Commissioner's office was under the jurisdiction of the Aizu domain, while the Kawana domain controlled the Judiciary Commissioner. Blech. I didn't fully understand the relationships between each domain, but so far as I knew, the Aizu and Kawana weren't quite fond of one another.
Nonetheless, our assistance has been formally requested. If you could only speak to your
It wouldn't make a difference. Now get! We have no use for Mibu's wolves.
How terrible. And after they'd asked for the Shinsengumi's help. I felt Harada's hand on my shoulder and turned to look up at him.
Forget about them. This isn't anything to make a fuss about. We get this sort of crap all the time.
But this is so galling. I wasn't truly a member of the Shinsengumi, but even so. After living with the Shinsengumi men and watching how they worked, I couldn't bear to see how they were treated, which is why this felt wrong to me. Every one of the Shinsengumi has worked so hard to maintain peace in Kyoto. How could these people, who are supposed to be our allies, turn us away without a second thought?
I appreciate the gesture, but I'm gonna need you to toughen up for me if you can. If we throw a fit here, then we might hurt Aizu's reputation. You get it?
Oh. The Kawana would only need to complain that the Shinsengumi hadn't showed them proper respect to make trouble for the Aizu. All of the men, including Harada, understood what needed to be done, and they endured.
There's nothing we can do here, Chief. We should leave the magistrate alone and meet with the Aizu domain's men on our own.
Saito's suggestion to Kondo was rudely interrupted by Takeda.
Us? Leave? What's the point of ignoring a military command in the battlefield? Chief, everyone knows that messengers get delayed during war. Leaving now would be foolish. I think we should remain here on standby.
If this location were a camp to which we were stationed, then maybe you'd be making sense. Unfortunately, it is not, and it would be wise for us to act in the best interest of the Shinsengumi.
Do you dare oppose my opinion? An opinion, mind you, from the Shinsengumi's war counselor?
Cool it. Saito brings up a good point.
Kondo nodded deeply as he glanced at Saito.
We, the Shinsengumi, will officially look for the camp that military commissioner is constructing.
And with that, the Shinsengumi set off to find the soldiers of the Aizu domain. Night had fallen by the time we arrived at Kujo Beach. After leaving the Fushimi Magistrate's office, we made for the Aizu Manor. Upon arriving, we relayed our previous encounter and asked for new orders. The manor official we met with directed us to go to Kujo Beach, which we did. However...
What? The Shinsengumi is to join us? We received no such order. I apologize, but could you speak with the commander at the
Nagakura seemed to tolerate no more of this.
What the hell? He was the one who told us to come here, goddammit! You want to fuck us over, fine, but you're going to be disobeying a direct order from your superior, pal. You really want to do that?
But please, calm down. I don't know what you... The man flinched and shivered, then fell silent. Kondo did his best to assume a professional air, but there was no hiding his massive grin.
I would like to speak to your commanding officer. Do you think you might be able to take me to him?
Nagakura, laying the smack down. I've had enough of your nonsense. At last, after a great deal of trouble, we were allowed to remain with the troops at Kujo Beach. The chief and the captains left the rest of us to speak with the Aizu commanders. They returned some time later, looking tired and drained. Inoue, who'd gone with them, also wore a bitter sort of half-smile.
Well, it would seem that the men stationed here are reserves and not the main force of their army. Their main force has been committed to the defense of Hamaguri Gate.
They're treating the Shinsengumi like reserves?
Then why the hell did they send us a message acting like this was some sort of emergency? We can't predict what might happen. Battle may soon approach us. There is little to do but wait.
So all we can do is wait. There was a chance that the call could come at night, so the men stayed awake, ready to act.
Just let us know if you need to rest a bit, Chizuru. You're always welcome to sleep on my lap.
Oh, no, I'm fine. Thanks. I shook my head. You just can't wait, that boy. It wouldn't be fair for me to be the one to sleep. The men had to remain alert, anticipating that they could face death at any moment. But I failed, and I fell asleep anyway. Anxiety wrapped around me until I slept near dawn. The men, however, were vigilant through the night. Even as I drifted in and out of consciousness, I could see them nearby, persisting against the night. The break of dawn burned my eyes as I heard it. A cannon?! The crack of a gunshot tore through the morning air, and in the distance I heard men shouting and the clang of metal. The fighting had begun. The captains looked at one another and nodded.
It's time we left.
I stared at him for a moment, perhaps not yet fully awake, until I understood what he was saying. Right! With a quick nod, I readied myself to go, then...
Stop! What do you think you're doing? We were ordered to stay here! Did you just tell me to stop?
Even during our lengthy march the day before, I'd never seen Hijikata mad. Maybe, because of his position as commander, he was afraid to express himself when his temper flared up, but it looked as if he reached his limit. Normally, he left the yelling to Nagakura and stayed patient when speaking with army officials. This time, however, he finally had enough.
I thought your job here was to protect the Imperial estate, but you'd rather sit on your fat ass. We're here to stop those Choshu assholes from attacking. Tell me, what are the Choshu doing? But we haven't received any orders.
Hijikata was in no mood for excuses.
If you've got any kind of pride in your job, then forget your goddamn orders and move!
Without even waiting for our response, Hijikata spun around and stalked off, fuming. Where are we going? I didn't dare raise my voice above a whisper, but I asked Saito, who was walking near me.
To the enemy, which, in this case, means Hamaguri Gate.
Hamaguri Gate? You mean where Aizu's main force is protecting, right?
The battle at the gate is likely to be an intense one. You'd better prepare yourself.
All right. Hijikata's fury seemed to rouse the Aizu's reserve, who up to this point seemed flustered by the threat of conflict, watching the Shinsengumi march. At the end, they followed the Shinsengumi to the Hamaguri Gate. Before long, we'd arrived. Oh my gosh! The gate was pockmarked with scores of bullets, and everywhere dead and dying soldiers littered the ground. The acrid stink of firearms hung in the air. Even though I tried to prepare myself mentally for what lay before me, my heart shattered from the traces of war occurring ahead. The enemy, however, was nowhere to be seen. We had arrived too late. The battle was already over. After a moment of stunned silence, several of our men were dispatched by Hijikata to determine what happened. Then Kondo sighed.
What are the Choshu thinking? They've raided the Imperial estate.
I find it difficult to know what they're doing. How do they claim to be an imperialist domain?
Kondo simply nodded. The Choshu define themselves as among those who revere the Emperor, yet they attack his home? Didn't make sense to me either. Nevertheless, the damage was done. I was in the middle of pondering their reasons when Saito returned to me.
It appears the Choshu attacked Hamaguri in the early morning, but were repelled by the combined forces of the Aizu and Satsuma.
The forces standing against them were too much for the Choshu, who were forced to retreat. The corner of Hijikata's mouth curled into a grin.
So, Satsuma's helping Aizu now, are they? Times sure are changing. Considering their less than friendly past, it would seem the Choshu became their common foe.
The Satsuma and Aizu domains hadn't been on the best of terms. I thought that they outsmarted the family domain and allied with the imperial court to expel foreigners. However, I recall my father telling me that they were not much different than the Choshu. Unlike the Choshu, however, they'd gone to war with a foreign force and suffered a devastating loss. Following their defeat, I learned the Satsuma began to reconsider their nationalistic stances. However, these were only rumors, and what had come to pass had yet to be fully determined.
Hijikata! Supposedly there's still some of those Choshu bastards fighting over at the Kuge Gate.
Hijikata's expression changed as he considered Harada's words, but before he could open his mouth to speak, Yamazaki appeared.
Commander, we believe the men who led this raid are headed for Mount Tenno.
Mount Tenno was located between Kyoto and Osaka. Supposedly, they're in the middle of escaping from Fushimi towards Osaka. After hearing the report from both Harada and Yamazaki, Hijikata contemplated deeply. Although Kondo was recognized as the formal head of the Shinsengumi, I had learned from everyone that all major decisions were deferred to Hijikata. This was no exception, and I could see that all eyes were on him. He was silent for a few moments, and then I saw his mouth curve in a small smile.
Looks like our work's cut out for us, boys. Harada, take your men to Kuge Gate to deal with those Choshu bastards. Sure thing, boss. Saito, Yamazaki, I want you to figure out what the situation is here. Hold Hamaguri Gate. As you wish.
Got it.
Your job's a tough one, Chief. I know this is a bitch, but I want you to speak with the Aizu bigwigs about a punitive expedition. So, punitive expedition for the Choshu, right? Some of those bastards are headed for Tenno, but others will run around and cause trouble. If we're gonna go after them, then we'll need to leave Kyoto, and only you can get us those papers.
The Shinsengumi were entrusted with the protection of Kyoto, and if this war was for aiding the Aizu, then they had to do more than just guard the gate. Leaving our post, however, to chase after the Choshu troops meant that we needed permission from the military commissioner, meaning the Aizu.
I see. If it's the chief of the Shinsengumi, the commissioner's office will listen to what we want.
After what we'd gone through the day before, I didn't imagine Kondo's task would be an easy one. Still, if the representative was anyone other than Kondo, the Aizu would be unlikely to grant the request, let alone entertain the notion of a meeting.
Gen, I want you to go with him. Somebody has to keep an eye on our chief, alright?
Of course. I'll do my best, Commander.
Another laugh ran through the soldiers, and Kondo's mouth twisted into a wry sort of grin. Perhaps he chose not to deny it because he knew he might go a little crazy.
The rest of you are coming with me to Tenno. As for you...
He looked directly at me. I wasn't a warrior, nor did I have political ties. Hijikata didn't know what to do with me. Suddenly I felt very much like dead weight.
You can't go with Kondo, but other than that, it's up to you.
Alright. Kondo was meeting with the leaders of the Aizu. If I joined him, there would be nothing for me. I had many options for what I could do. Hijikata would be pursuing the leaders of the Choshu attack toward Tenno Mountain. Saito would be staying at Amagiri Gate to protect it and to gather information. Harada and his men would be going to Kuge Gate to stop the attack on the Imperial Estate. The question was, where would I go? Right where you are, girl. You're in the perfect spot. I decided to remain at Hamaguri Gate with Saito. Before long, the rest of the Shinsengumi was gone, and it was time for us to begin our own mission.
First, we must speak with the Aizu on behalf of the Shinsengumi.
In all the excitement, I completely forgot that the Shinsengumi were ordered to stay with the reserves. Instead, we'd chosen to march to battle. Saito was probably right to try and smooth things over with the Aizu as soon as possible.
If you like, I can take care of that. I imagine recent events have thrown their commanders into confusion. They shouldn't impede us.
Okay. Then I will leave that task to you, Yamazaki. Send word for me if you encounter any difficulty.
On his way. Yamazaki bowed once and turned on his heel and disappeared. Good old Yamazaki. So quiet here. The area near the Hamaguri Gate was filled with warriors. I could see some men from the Aizu domain and perhaps some men from Satsuma as well. They appeared to be arguing over something. We'd been looking around the area to get the lay of the land when we sensed something unpleasant and went to investigate. That was when we found the confrontation between the Aizu and the Satsuma. What are they arguing about?
I assume it is over who will take credit for this battle. How petty.
Oh. The words were barely out of my mouth when one of the Satsuma men noticed us.
Wait, is this the Shinsengumi? Really? You know they're a bunch of filthy peasants, right? Hear that, boys? The Aizu are too scared to fight if they don't have some ruining bums to back them up.
What? I could see the faces of the Shinsengumi stiffen, and more than one hand moved toward a sword. Saito, however, was as implacable as ever.
Ignore them. You have a job to do.
He swept his cool gaze slowly over the men, looking each man in the eye. They shifted restlessly, but their hands dropped from their swords.
Hey, Satsuma! You son of a bitch! How dare you mock us, Aizu!
His face was bright red, and his sword shook as he held it at the ready. If something wasn't done soon, that sword was likely to start spilling blood. Oh. Well, hello. Before anyone from the Satsuma could respond, a tall man stepped through them and out into the space between the two factions.
What? You'll face me? Then taste my steel!
With a yell, the soldier threw himself forward, raising his sword to anticipate a deadly cut. Saito dashed forward, almost too fast to see, and stopped before the charging man.
Stop. He's far too strong for you.
Wow, just by looking at him.
I apologize for the trouble we caused at the inn. I believe I had a duel with a boy named Toto. If his injury hasn't healed yet, please tell him that I apologize for not showing more restraint.
It was you who defeated Toto then.
Yes, I suppose that would fit.
If Saito had even heard the man's apology, he showed no sign of it. That was not how I was expecting this guy to come in.
I imagine the Satsuma sent you to the inn as spies to learn what the Choshu were planning.
The man simply shrugged and tilted his head to the side, almost quizzically. Saito took a step toward him. That was the quietest beginning of a duel I think I've ever heard. The tip of Saito's sword was only a hair's breadth from the man's forehead. He drew it so fast I saw no blur of silver as it left the scabbard. Unperturbed, the man glanced down at Saito.
The Shinsengumi has unfinished business with you. Maybe not today, but Toto will have his revenge.
Perhaps, but I have no reason to fight the Shinsengumi today.
He replied as calmly as if they had been enjoying tea together. Saito said nothing, and his sword did not move. Was Saito really that angry? I could certainly see why he would have been, but this was not the time to settle grudges. Still, he was a tough man to read. What was I to do? I mean, it's Saito. He never does anything crazy. I trust him. Saito was also well aware of his duties, and was not the sort of man to allow emotion to compromise his decisions, as shown by his ordering his men to stand down after being grievously insulted. Yeah. I didn't know what it was, but he had a plan. He must have somehow sensed my decision, because for a moment his eyes flicked to me and he smiled. Thanks. Thanks for reading my train of thought there, Boo.
I have no interest in escalating the situation. Our goals are the same. However, we cannot overlook any further insults. If you persist, then the Aizu domain and the Shinsengumi will have no choice but to take action.
The tall man from the Satsuma nodded deeply.
It is true our speech and conduct was unbecoming. My apologies on behalf of the Satsuma domain.
Saito returned the man's nod and slid his sword back into its scabbard. The Satsuma man seemed displeased with how things turned out, but whoever the tall man was, none of them dared to speak out against him. Now I understood what Saito had intended to do. By forcing the Satsuma to apologize, he had allowed the Aizu to save face. By directly confronting the issue, he had been able to avoid any bloodshed. Wow. Because the Satsuma man understood his intentions, he apologized. Regardless, I couldn't help but sigh, relieved that we avoided another pointless fight.
I also hoped to avoid a conflict. I am grateful to you for stepping down.
He bowed deeply.
My name is Saito Amagiri. I pray that we will be able to work together when next we meet.
His introduction finished, he turned and walked slowly back through the ranks of the Satsuma, towering above them as he went. Saito, you never intended to fight him, did you? There was a short silence. Saito looked coiled inside himself, staring in the direction Amagiri walked towards before speaking.
I'd hoped that the display of my EI would be enough to dissuade him. But it seems he saw right through my ruse.
Huh? Saito practiced EI, a sword style that focused on drawing a blade and striking in a single stroke. Amagiri made no attempt to dodge his blow. How would he have known that Saito intended to stop just before the blow landed?
The Satsuma command some very dangerous men. If they were not men of reason as well, we would already be dead.
I wasn't sure if Saito was talking to me or himself, and before I could ask, he turned and walked away. We returned to the Hamaguri gate to await Yamazaki's return, but there was little else to do. After that incident, there were no battles. However, the tension remained unabated. Was it possible for the Satsuma and Aizu to find a common ground and coexist peacefully? It seemed like imagining such a world would be an impossible dream. The Choshu extremists' attempted attack on the imperial estate eventually came to be known as the Amagiri Rebellion. Although the Shinsengumi were called to action, their efforts were stymied, and they found little in the way of glory. Communication with their superiors was poor at best, and they spent much of the battle waiting with the reserves. When the Shinsengumi finally entered the battle, each man found several strange opponents awaiting him. Chikage Kazuma, who defeated Okita at Ikeda, claimed to be from the Satsuma domain during his encounter with Hijikata. Kyuju Amagiri, the man who shattered Heisuke's head guard at Ikeda, also claimed membership in the Satsuma, and we had the most quiet duel ever. They had also met Kyo Shiranui, who had fought alongside men from Choshu. Whoever they were, it was clear they were not allies of the Shinsengumi. Indeed, it seemed they could easily become some of its greatest enemies. If they were to meet in open battle, the casualties would be severe. By the time the battle was over, the commanders of the Choshu attack had been killed in the fighting, or took their own lives. There were some soldiers, however, who escaped, setting Kyoto ablaze as they fled. By some terrible misfortune, winds that day blew from the north and fanned the flames, reducing the southern end of the imperial estate to ash. As a result of the Choshu attack, many imperial nationalists were executed. With the Amagiri rebellion over, the Choshu were branded as traitors for attacking the estate. From then on, they were acknowledged enemies of the court.